Thanks so much, Matt, for joining me today. And again, if anybody wants to listen to our first episode, episode 54, anybody wants to kind of hear a deep dive into One Tree Planet, what it is, its sort of mission. Here we're gonna talk a little bit more about, the overall industry, trees and the environment, Earth Day, a little bit on nonprofits, and just a lot of different topics. But if anybody wants to listen to sort of the One Tree Planet story and Matt's story, they can do episode 54. I'll link it in below. But I kind of want to start with Earth Day, right? And it's sort of this this Super Bowl, if you will, of the environment, I guess, every day each year, and it's coming up. And so, what is it like to prepare, right, for Earth Day? As sort of an environmental nonprofit, it's Earth Day has kind of gained a lot of momentum over the last decade or so to be a pretty big deal now. So is it just like a draft? Is it like a draft for a professional sports team? You're just preparing for months and months trying to get something terrific done?
Yeah, totally. It is like a draft day and months in advance. And I think that we should be doing even more months in advance. And I think this year we bit off more than we can chew, because usually every Earth Day, Earth Month, we have organized 100 tree planting events around the world, which is a task in itself with the team. But just, I think the environment's becoming more and more top of mind, and more people are reaching out trying to figure out things they can do for Earth Day. So this year, what we did was we got 5 great sponsors that chipped in some decent amount of funding to help us host this really big event that we're doing on Earth Day in San Francisco. So people are arriving in San Francisco. Thursday, we're doing, a tour around San Francisco. We're going to a baseball game, seeing the Oakland A's against Baltimore Orioles. But then Friday, we have sessions all day with, a lot of different companies, brands that are helping the environment. We have partners from the ground coming from the Amazon rainforest, from India. Cal Fire is going to be there. And the drone technology, the satellite monitoring. So on Earth Day, it's going to be a really informative day, but we want to make it light and fun and not like preachy or anything like that. And then all go out for dinner, and it's just going to be a great, 4-day event with like-minded people to learn about what is going on in the industry. And then Saturday, we're doing a big tree planting event in Golden Gate Park, where there's going to be like 400 volunteers coming out. And then on Sunday, we're doing a site visit. So, a lot for our team to be organizing right now, on top of Earth Day being super busy. And then we always get brands and people calling us, in April, like, oh my God, it's Earth Day. And what can we do?
Right. Last minute, huh? Last minute stuff. Well, you had mentioned satellites and sort of drones, and sort of how, we've spoken a little bit about technology before we started recording a little bit. What are some of the interesting things that you're seeing around drones, around satellite? I guess can that do, for us as sort of Earth lovers and people who want to understand biodiversity a bit more, and how trees affect sort of our everyday life? I guess, what are you seeing from a technology point of view, specifically, those things you're going to talk about at the fest?
Well, being in this environmental space, giving to any organization, let's just say, is like, hey, I'm a donor. How is my money being used? I think that's top of mind, right? And especially us being One Tree Planted, and people are donating to get a tree planted, is how do I know my tree is being planted? And then, did it survive? So the technology component is important for us in 2022. So there's, let's just say 3 for us that I'm looking at, is when somebody is out there in the field, and whether it's in Kenya or it's in New Zealand, how do I know the tree was planted? So can they take the picture of that tree and it's GPS tagged, and you can't alter the data, and that they can go back out 3 months, 6 months and take the picture, and it's being tagged and it's showing that it's surviving. So that's one aspect of technology we're beta testing right now in the field. And I think an important part to that is that we're sharing with that farmer on the ground, and he's got something that's more sustainable. So how could we pay them? And we were talking about other technologies, the payment methods, which is a whole other conversation. But then the second part is drones. So the drones, not necessarily for the planting of trees, but the drones that we can go out to our partners and teach them how to use it. And it can fly around the landscape very efficiently and analyze the landscape, a massive landscape, down to the blade of grass. Right. So we can understand where are the critical areas that there's more need of planting, or hot spots, let's just say. But then there's the post part, because then we could then update the donor and saying, hey, the project's complete, and they're getting this drone imagery, and you can 3D the landscape and get down to the blade of grass. So very cool. I mean, the technology can get down to even seeing anthills that are coming back. And then the third part to the technology that's going to be at the conference and we're working on is the satellite technology. So there's a lot of great companies out there doing the shots that can get down to 0.5 meter resolution. And you could really see, how much is being restored, so that we don't have to get on a plane and fly across the world to kind of see that our projects are indeed working. So after 3 years, you have that satellite imagery that's getting more and more sophisticated, and it's moving very fast on all fronts. So those are the 3 topics that we're bringing up at we're calling it Forest Fest in San Francisco.
I love that. It's like a South by Southwest for Earth, right? That'd be something chill. Forest Fest though. At this point, you guys have planted over 40 million trees, right? And that is, obviously an immense sort of goal that has been surpassed. And that is, take a step back and sort of applaud the team, right? This is pretty immense goal that has been met. But what I noticed was interesting is that, in 2019, it was like, 4 million, 5 million. And then all of a sudden they had this growth spurt of not just one tree planted, but I think just the space of trees just made a comeback in society of being like, hey, this is something I think we all can do. I think it all registers with all of us, because I think we can all plant trees, right? It's something that we can do personally. It's something we can donate to, and it's affordable to do that, right? Where a lot of other things is just a bit more difficult. But from, let's say, like 2019 to now, right, you guys have seen great growth. Do you believe that that's from society in general being more aware of trees and its possibilities? Like, what do you contribute that growth to?
A couple of things, and it's a great point. I think one, the environment and consumers were expecting more from brands that they were buying from. So the momentum was in place. But I think the thing that was maybe even more the catalyst was when COVID started, and a lot of people were working from homes, and companies were always kind of scrambling to hit that next quarterly objectives or whatever. People got to take a breather and got to refocus their efforts as companies and people that, hey, the environment's important. And the other part that I tie into it is that there was skepticism saying, hey, if we invest this time and this money into doing this, is it really going to work? But I think, in the 3 months, we saw the waterways being cleaner. You could see the Himalayas. So you saw in 3 months, hey, with less people out there. So we should be doing more. And we got a lot busier as an organization because, companies were trying to realign their commitments and their internally employees were saying, number one thing that we want to do as employees is things that are helping the environment. And then trees, to add to that, it's tangible. So like when you go out and get your hands in the dirt and you're planting that tree, you go back, you can see it, and trees are helping, with a lot of other factors, which I think is important. So air quality, water quality, creation of jobs, carbon. And then, we were at COP, and a lot of big commitments for reducing deforestation, planting more trees, a lot of other initiatives coming out, trillion trees, billion trees here. Canada made the commitment for 2 billion trees, but easier said than done. And I say that, loosely, because, where do we have access to the land? Do the nurseries have the ability to scale, to grow that amount of trees? And, it's not just about planting a tree, it's growing a tree. So I think that the world is now realizing, that it is important, it needs to be done, but it's doing it the right way and not just doing it loosey-goosey.
Yeah, that was actually my next question is doing something good is important, right? I think we all agree that we all taking that step forward as from individuals or corporates. There's still like a right and a wrong way to do everything, right? And making sure that if you're doing good and you're doing it the right way, because you want to emphasize that impact, right? Just like you want to emphasize, making money and profitability, and you should have the same mindset when you go toward impact, right? Like, how can we do this the best way possible? So I guess when you talk to, whether it's companies, big or small, whatever it may be, and what people are sort of looking for, even if they don't go with you guys, right? But like, how do you point them in like the right direction of, hey, if you're going to do this right, and this is how you do it correctly, right? Is that a lot of the conversations that you have, or they come in and kind of already know what they want to do?
No, I find most of the time they don't know what they want to do. And I use the word enlighten them, and a lot of companies, are making these carbon neutrality goals and objectives by this, and they're trying to figure out the best way to do it. And like, when you plant a tree, it's definitely not going to be the cheapest way to hit that carbon offset number for them. But we talk about co-benefits, when you're planting here and restoring X amount of hectares, you're also helping with water quality, soil quality, biodiversity. So a company could say, hey, we're doing this to reduce our footprint, but we got all these other great co-benefits. But, one tree planted, we look at quality projects. And luckily, because we've grown to be in the size right now, we are saying to companies, thanks, but no thanks, because, this is an amazing project, but the cost is this. And this is the right way to do it. And it's not good for anybody to just try and do it on the cheapest possible way.
A great word, co-benefits there. I think that is, to me, it's such a term that I think more and more people should try to look at when they're doing any type of project, right? Or any type of decision that they're making, whether it's in a for-profit or nonprofit organization. Like the co-benefits of something is so phenomenal. Like you said, plant a tree, you plant a tree, but not really. Like you plant a tree, you could create jobs in the local community. Those trees could have food on them that are nutritious and help with the local, food economy, local nutrition. There's, like you said, there's so many ancillary domino effects when you do these type of things. So when you when you talk to them, like, is that kind of where you steer them toward? Like, look, you're not just planting a tree, you're actually doing much more than that. It's trying to show them that vision a little bit, huh? Trying to explain that.
Totally. And you know what? I excite them. I get on a call
for sure.
Brand, there's a bunch of people and they're trying to figure it out. And all of a sudden they're coming back and like, oh my God, this is amazing. Now we want to do this. Now we want to do that. But they're putting their toe in the water, let's just say, with us as an organization, which I completely understand because, we're only 8 years old, continuing to grow, trying to bring reforestation to the next level in terms of the transparencies and tracking every dollar in to the project and getting the reporting back to them in a timely manner. Where I found back in the day, you're in the dark. You made a donation to X organization. 2 years later, you got this massive report, crazy technical, you didn't understand it. Right. So when we talked about the technology aspect, another part that I missed is, portal where the donor could log in and understand at what stage is my dollar and how's it being used. But going back to the original point is showing them that this works. And then I think if you can get a company, a person of any size that they're going to give you $20 now, you're over delivering, you know what I mean? Right. In terms of what they're seeing, then they're going to give you $100 and then they're going to give you $200 and they're seeing that it's working. So that's the way we've been growing and we keep it super simple and be straight up with them.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's, you could simplify it down, right? And just, if they want to do it, they want to do it, right? But I think it's such important to do it the right way, and I think I see, some people perhaps maybe not doing it the right way or just kind of doing it because, like you said, it's just they have to check it off as a checkbox for their company, right, for that year. I want to jump into a little bit of the great old nonprofit industry, right? And it's and as we venture into 2022, I guess, what are you maybe optimistic about, not so optimistic about, some good things, some bad things, just kind of get a scope from being, a nonprofit leader in the industry now for almost a decade. I guess, what are you hopeful for, optimistic about for this year?
I think more collaboration. I think the 80-20 rule has always been top of mind. Like if to any nonprofit, as a donor, I'm giving that, it's being used appropriately, successfully, efficiently, let's just say. But I see more collaboration happening. Newer generation kind of coming in, thinking openly, why spend money on a duplication of resources if we can do this together, have greater impact together. 2022 for us as a nonprofit, I think nonprofits are definitely viewed differently than the for-profit in terms of how things are being done, which I get. But at the end, you want to look at impact, 80-20, meaning that 80% of my dollar is being used to go to the ground and 20% to cover the operating, because that's still critical, because you still need to check these projects and everything. And just, better transparency to what is going on. And I think we were talking about it in cryptocurrency, blockchain, like what are ways that, we can be just making this work way better.
Before we had on, we had touched on, blockchain a little bit and just being about, hey, okay, we have to start to understand this, like try to figure out how it could be beneficial to us. You had mentioned you've done some research in it, and I guess, what is your opinion of it now, and perhaps what it could be, right? Like right now it's version 1, right? So, but in a decade from now, it could do some really powerful things. But I guess just when you did your research and looking into it, kind of what did you find out?
So we spoke and I did my research out there, because there was a lot of people said, we want to donate to you with cryptocurrency, and we couldn't even accept it. But then we found a platform where we could accept it. And we've received quite a bit of funding from that, which has been great. And then it converts into dollars, and I have a team that figures out how that all works. So very limited knowledge in this space. And then I was speaking to blockchain, because I think if I can enhance this whole journey on how it happens with like state of the art, that nothing could be altered and it's there, fantastic. But at the end, the project on the ground was entering the data, and that's where I found that well, the whole point to this is being as accurate as possible, and there could be no kinks in the chain, let's just say.
Yep.
And I found that it's not there, but look, you have to try it and perfect it and give feedback. So we're talking to a lot of different organizations out there trying it. Yep. And, what's that expression, kicking the can, or, figuring it, and it'll just keep getting better and better. Look, when I started this year 1, year 2, year 3, you're figuring it out as you go. And that's the way that I roll here. I figure it out as I go, and what worked well, what's not working so well, what are we doing better next time?
Yeah, you had mentioned nonprofit and for-profit a little bit ago. And, it's really interesting because the best nonprofits, like the ones that do really, really well, like just run themselves like a for-profit business, right? And I see that a lot in you guys, and you just kind of see it through the new offices that you have, right? You're trying to create an environment for your employees who want to come in every day, bright windows, bright lights. Let's, like a startup, right? It looks like a startup there, right? And that's, I think that mentality, I don't know if it's like looked as not a good way to do things in the nonprofit like arena, but it seems reluctant to kind of take that approach as hey, we're going to act like a for-profit company in this. And
you have to, if you want to grow, and you want to have scale. And again, I'm building this not to be the largest organization out there in our space. Corporate culture is the most important, and we have an amazing team here, and giving the right type of work environment. Yeah, you're going to spend a few more dollars having the technologies and having a retractable roof and having trees that are growing inside there, and dog-friendly environment where people can come. They're like, oh my God, this is an amazing place to
in an old restaurant, right? Give them the visuals.
We're dealing with it. I'll give you an example. When I go to Forest Fest, we are invited to throw out the home opener pitch, One Tree Planted, like Oakland 8. And I know somebody at One Tree Planted is a fanatical baseball fan. Like, she loves it. And I said, Christina, you can throw it out, right? And one of the project managers was in Costa Rica with Coldplay backstage hanging with the band, because when you buy a ticket, it's planting a tree. And they were like having such a great time. They got to see the projects in Costa Rica doing the tour, this and that. Wow. So people, they love what they're doing, and we're doing great things together. But yeah, so I approach it very differently. I hear it all the time that I'm unconventional. We all have funny titles and org chart. To me, I want it to be as flat as possible, and we're all moving together.
The org chart is just branches, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Boom.
No pun intended, exactly. So now I have to find a happy medium between the way that I have my vision and the corporate culture, build a brand, because we're 60 people in the organization, keeping things structured properly, and being able to grow. But to answer your question is, I think it's very important. And that is one thing that irks me in terms of the way that nonprofits are viewed, and you can't do this and you can't do that. Right. And like, why not? It's never been done before, but all these people have done crazy successful things, did things that had never been done before. And they either disrupted the industry or they brought it to the next level. And you have to have that kind of view, I feel, to do what we're doing.
You mentioned scale, and scale can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people in a lot of different industries. What does scale mean for you? Is it strictly the amount of trees, being planted every year? Is that sort of the scale metric that you look at?
No. And again, it's not about being 100 million tree organization. If it happens organically, so be it. I want us to scale. But when I say scale, in terms of having a stronger infrastructure, in terms of our technologies being able to really have a full handle on everything that's going on, then things falling through the cracks or becoming siloed as a team, because as you grow, you're also siloed, and this left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Day by day, week by week, life throws you curveballs, right? We've had projects that, based on certain circumstances, get delayed or get paused, going back to the donors saying, hey, well, your funding that went here can happen because of X, Y, and Z. What do you want to do? So again, but being able to be efficient, not bogged down. And so my main thing would be, we're growing organically.
That's the best way to do it. Sometimes it's, I think being prepared for scale is something that
proactive versus reactive. Constantly thinking way ahead. So I constantly try and get my team to think about that, all the difference, no rock on stone unturned. And when you mention scale, I mean, scale from a technology perspective, you have massive scale because of technology, but we still have manual labor. We still have land that we have to prep, and we still have nurseries that can only grow 500,000 trees. So if you take the West Coast, for example, there's not the nursery capacity to scale over there. So I have constraints on that side. Then it's access to land that we could actually get into. And then is the land even prepped and able to take these type of trees? What's happening in the future 5 years from now that, more resilient to drought or forest fires? So can we even scale? So it's just not from a technology standpoint where you can have massive scale. There's things that can be barriers to us. And then the labor pool, in a lot of regions where they traditionally had agricultural labor don't want to go that route anymore. So a lot of projects are telling us that they're having a hard time finding the labor, even if I could grow the nurseries, equip them with the trucks and the logistics to get there. So a lot of moving parts on our side that people don't really think about.
That's interesting. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of manual, still kind of version one of everything is still, people having to, for lack of a better term, get their hands dirty, right? I mean, there's still human capital in all this to scale. And that obviously, was really tested with COVID, right? Like, was that the hardest time you went through, like as a leader of the organization? Was that the most difficult couple of years you've had?
Big growth for us. And again, just because of COVID and big brands now realigning their environmental commitments and calling us, trying to figure out ways to do it. But, part for us was doing tree planting events just in local cities where those employees and those key decision makers can come out, get their hands in the dirt and realize how it was helping with the water quality or the local biodiversity. Then a light bulb goes off to them. They're like, great, let's do more. And we've been scaling. So I think the hardest part, when you say in the challenge, has not been from COVID itself, but has been in our growth, has been the hardest part for me. And keeping that corporate culture and the way I want the organization to run when you have so many people. It's been
is that changing your, like, the way you hired, in the first 3 years? Has that changed? Has that changed at all for you? Because when you scale, like you said, you kind of have to hire a little bit more quickly, right?
Hire more quickly, being able to realize to get the people that you want, that takes 3 months or 4 months to find the right candidate to fit. We're also bringing a lot more people that have 10, 15 years experience working in this environmental space, that maybe work for larger organizations that weren't as nimble, that wanted to kind of do something that was going to have a quicker impact than coming here where we're nimble. So we're starting to get a lot more people coming in now with decades of experience, which is helping us a lot because it's helping, that expression, hire people smarter than you. To me, I was like, and everybody's way smarter than me and knows their stuff. Then we're building an incredible team that can work, cohesively together, and a great group of people. I think I might have said it to you on the last time, but no Debbie Downers. Like, people like, we're going to get this done and we're going to figure out a way to get it done, right? And that's what you want to do. You're going to run into roadblocks and obstacles, and you can't just stop, because a lot of times people say you can't do it. People are like, okay, no, figure out a way to make it work. And that's what we want here. And then, we have an HR department. The first few people that came in here, they just were fresh out of university and didn't really have a specific degree of that, but you figure it out on the job. You go and you just keep calling and this and that. Look, even myself, when I was calling people to just understand the space as a whole, people thought I was a quack, but you want to absorb all the information. And I have stories where I would tell them, one day I'm going to give you $1 million, the United States Forest Service. And they're like, I'm sure they hear that all the time, but we give them millions of dollars now. So I had this dream of what we wanted to do and inspire people, make it simple for people to help the environment. And I really never would have thought we'd be at this stage or this level, but it's been a great journey.
Going to the Forest Service example, is that because you're able to work with them to plant damaged land, whether it's from natural disasters or something like that? Like, how would you work with them?
Well, they've only had 3 official partners for decades. We became the newest partner, and there's 4 official partners. So why they let One Tree Planted come in, don't know, but here we are. So I really thank them for giving us this opportunity. But, we receive funding, and I call it buckets. And if somebody donates $1, $10, and the company gives 10,000, then I have these big amounts of funding. Gotcha. So then we have on our website, donate to, a national forest. And then so they have their budget, the Forest Service, and it's for, X, Y, and Z. So we're paying for the cost of the trees and the cost of the labor that's going to go out and plant. But there's a lot of other costs the Forest Service has, like the site prep and the monitoring and the maintenance of the trees. So this is working together, and it's often a lot of these projects, right? That organization on the ground has their own funding. They're always missing a bit more capital. So we come in and say, we're going to give you X amount more, and it's the catalyst to get the project going. And then they could get maybe a grant match that's locally. So a lot of times it's three components of funding that gets these projects off the ground. And to me, I believe that it's the better way, because the organization on the ground has a vested interest to make this project work. Because if it was us or any organization said, here's $1 million, plant it, and they go out and they plant it loosely, and then there's no monitoring and they didn't think it through, and they lose $1 million, well, it's not our money. We got it from some government. We got it from that organization. No, they've worked really hard to raise X amount. We're giving them the same amount. And together,
what's that collaboration you were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah,
like that.
Totally. It's the best way. And making it simple to receive the funding. One last piece. So that you're not jumping through hoops and hurdles, because I think a lot of organizations are bootstrapped, 3-people organization doing incredible work for decades, but when they want to fill it, it takes some weeks and hours of mounds of paperwork, right?
Yeah.
We make it pretty simple for them. And obviously we have a really good vetting process that our team, gets in from the criteria in 3 stages, in order. And then we release the funding and milestones. So they have to prove to us that, they're doing this part. So a third up front, a third in the middle, and a third upon completion. So that way we have all the info and they can report back to the donors. Because again, we have an obligation to making sure that your $1 that came to us is getting planted properly, is surviving, and what happened.
Speaking of, like, as Forest Fest comes, right, is coming up, is this the first time you're going to do it since COVID? Was it before COVID y'all had this, or this is a new thing that you're doing?
It's a new thing, because I used to just take my team. I used to go to Colorado every year for Earth Day, and we just have a fun thing internally, and we would get volunteers to come out and we plant in 4 Mile Canyon. This is the first year that we're doing it, and we have sponsors on board. We have workshops and sessions, so people are coming, and it's 15-minute sessions. Don't want it to be 30 minutes or 1 hour and you're starting to look at your phone. Like, I'm going to know this is successful. I look in the audience, they're not on their phone, they're engaged, right? And the goal, when people say, well, what's your objective, this and that, we're hearing internally. And my goal is that if you come to this, when it's over, you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to come next year to this. And and you're having great conversations with people. You could be talking to Cal Fire, you could be talking to my marketing director, an RCD, and you're like, wow, that's how you're doing it? I never had a clue that that's how it's being done. We're definitely biting off more than we can chew. We're keeping it small, our first rodeo on this one. And is it going to be in San Francisco next year, or do we do it in another, key city?
Right. Yeah.
After it, we'll assess and figure out. But I think it'll be a great 4 days for people to really learn a lot, meet like-minded people.
And I think that, look, I mean, COVID kind of obviously crushed live events for 2 years, right? There's still, I mean, getting together with people is like, you can do these virtual events, right? You can do, like, right now we're virtual, right? I mean, but like there'd be nothing like us sitting together and doing this, right? It's just a different feeling. So that connection with people, like, I feel like that is going to allow even more scale, right? Even more partnerships, even more development with collaboration, whatever it may be. I just see like live events coming back to light for, whether it's a nonprofit industry or startups or companies, whatever it is. The collaboration part, I think we didn't have any, almost not any, but like, it's different when you have live sort of collaboration. I think things get done better and in more detail. Yeah.
My chief operating officers in Maine would do Zoom call. When he comes here into Montreal now, and been more often, 1 hour in the room, conference room, whiteboarding, it feels way more, right?
And it's amazing, right? What you can get done in 3 hours in person versus.
It's such a big difference. But you know what you said, for this next year, we should be doing this conversation. Well, let's just say it's back in San Francisco together. I want you there.
Well, we'll be back in America. So we're moving back in January next year. So January 2023. Right. So I will put it on the calendar, man. And that will be like something I will make happen for sure. If it's in San Francisco, right? It could be, I guess, in Utah, Colorado, whatever it may be.
Totally. And what episode number is this one? I mean, the one we did originally was 54. Like, I mean,
dude, this is almost 100 more past yours. Or almost be like 100 more past that one we did.
And I listened to so many of them, and they're so great and such diversity. So good on you. So that's amazing.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Well, last question I have here is, 2022, I think we kind of, tackled a lot of the information, but let's say, the next decade, right? I mean, I know that's tough to talk about and when we look at scale, but I guess what are some of the successes and goals that you would like to have for the organization, the next decade, if we can look that far out?
Trying to think a couple months out, in terms of an incredible team. Again, I would rather stay flat at doing 50 million trees per year. And I have an incredible team that's there, and you look forward to going into work every day. And we know we have quality partners on the ground. So I'm not looking 10 years out in terms of we're going to be at this level. I mean, having this shindig here, and this retractable roof, and being able to come in here and you can bring your dogs, and having a team that's working cohesively, synergistically. You're not stressed to life and have quotas breathing down your back. You know what I mean? So I know I'm not answering your question, but really, it's always been build the brand, corporate culture to me, and then obviously quality projects and long-term partnerships. If I were to say anything, I think a lot of these things that we do, they need multi-year commitments from brands that they know they have funding for the next 5 years versus this 1 year, one and done type of thing. And then the company's hired all these people for the labor and everything, and then they don't have the funding in place. So we're looking at that. So what I use the term, and we're enhancing our systems in this year. And I think that will be always what we're trying to strive for, is just keep getting better and better at what we do.
Amazing. We'll tell the audience about like the new digs in the HQ. It's in a old restaurant in Montreal. Unfortunately, like you said, COVID hit so many restaurants, right? But now maybe all these restaurants will become like nonprofit headquarters, right? Like what a cool thing that would be. So like,
yeah, it was an amazing restaurant, one of a kind here in Montreal. And, there's an Italian restaurant, and the roof retracts. They have these, trees that are growing along the wall.
So cool. Yeah.
And, we're going to obviously retrofit this to have conference rooms where people can go into meetings, but kind of open style cafe.
Yeah, it's great.
It's in Little Italy. So there's a lot of great cafes and restaurants around here, and a beautiful park, accessible by metro. We want our employees to be a bike path to get here, bring your bikes in.
Amazing, man.
Next year, Forest Fest #2, and you'll be coming to our HQ when we open it up.
we're gonna do a whole day worth of conversations and stuff. And because I mean, look, you'll have amazing people at Forest Fest, so I think I can grab a lot of episodes from that as well. Pulling people aside, invite them over to the conference room and have some recording sessions with some cool people. So super looking forward to it. I know you're busy. Thank you so much for your time. We will talk soon for sure.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks.